A person's late teens and early 20s can often be the most stressful of a person's life, mainly because there's so little certainty, so many things still to figure out, like who you are and who you want to be. So what does it look like when a person strives for purpose? God's way. In today's episode, I'll be talking with Damon Nailer.
Hello, everybody.
Damon is the Renaissance man, Damon the real Nailer. He is a former educator, a motivational speaker, author, and the current director of the Family Resource Center at the Children's Coalition in downtown Monroe. Thank you, Damon, for being out today and coming to share your story with me.
Thank you so much, Brandy, for having me. I count it a blessing and a privilege to be here with you, and I just appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, that's really likewise. That's how I feel as well. I'm so honored to even have you here. Now, to ask, how did you become known as the Renaissance Man? Tell my listeners what that means.
So a Renaissance man is someone who's known to do a variety of things and to do them well. Mm-hmm. And so I, received that name because of all of the hats that I wear.
Yes.
Of being, like you said, motivational speaker, author, producer, songwriter, performer. The list goes on. Husband, father, man of God, minister. So, but yes, man, that's where that came from.
Love it. Yes. And that definitely fits you well because you are, in that context, you are for sure a Renaissance man.
Appreciate that. Yes,
and you do them well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
From my perspective, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I looked up some of your books. I have one of them because you gave me one.
Okay.
And the other one I looked at, I think it's like Living, Loving, Leading. Yes.
Right.
That one. And I think you have a few more. How many books do you have?
I've published 4.
Yeah.
And so as far as available on Amazon, we have The Living, Loving, Leading, and then Revelation Rightly Revealed.
Okay.
But the other one, the first one was The Great Taste of Success. That was my first one way back in, should have been 2005, I believe. Yes, 2005 when I published that one. And I just did it locally in print, and then I converted it into the digital ebook there. Mm-hmm. And, I share that. Normally, I kind of gift that to people.
Yeah.
But yes, and then I had done A Greater Taste of Success. It's just an ebook as well. And I can't even remember what year that was. And then I know in 2016 is when I published Revelation Rightly Revealed. And then in 2020, right before the pandemic hit, I published Living, Loving, Leading.
Yeah.
And, I all of them are really good in my opinion, like
of course.
you said.
Yeah.
But yes, I know the Living, Loving, Leading, I didn't get to promote that one like I wanted to due to the pandemic. I had a nice strategy prepared and I was ready to go. And because I published in February.
Oh, my goodness.
So when it's time to launch and do the book tours and all of that, boom. It's like, are you kidding me? But the thing I like about that one, it has such a broad appeal. It appeals to just all walks of life. But it's an interactive book as well. At the end of each chapter, I have questions from the chapter. Yeah. And then I have an answer key there for you so you can check your answers or whatever. Okay. So it's more like a workbook as well.
Yeah. Cool.
But yes.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Awesome. Mm-hmm. Do you use some of that stuff like in your motivational speaking and or even in your current job?
Yes, of course. Yes, those techniques and strategies, I promise you, Brandy, they are proven. Mm-hmm. And I guess what inspired me was initially when I started working at the coalition and then doing the other things that I was doing, just observing leadership and being trained in leadership. Yeah. And God just really began to heavily inspire me to write that because I had other books I was working on. As a matter of fact, there are a couple that I'm working on now. But that book just came out of nowhere. Yeah. And God was so heavily inspiring me that I had to just get it down. But of course, yes, all of the material that I put out, I approve it first. And I utilize it over and over. And as you stated, going back to my first book, The Great Taste of Success, which the format is the 50 Proverbs, accompanied by the matching stories that further expound on the Proverbs. But I'm always using those quotes, consistently and, continuously. But yes.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. And Well, we could have a whole other podcast on that right now.
Right. Hey, whenever you're ready. I'm ready.
I might have you back on.
Yes.
But for right now, though, let's talk about your story for today. So where does it start?
Well, we'll start in my latter 20s there, and it was during a transitional period, I would say. And what happened, I had begun my professional career as an elementary educator, right? So I was teaching, and I would say the first 3 years, I was just so passionate about it. Loved it. Yeah. By that fourth year, that passion began to dwindle for that. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't for the educational component or the teaching component. Mm-hmm. It was just the structure and the format of school, elementary school, that began to bother me.
I understand completely.
Oh, that's how I felt. Your background too, right?
Yeah. Like, that was,
Yeah. That's how I felt confined. And I would say about that fourth year going on into the seventh year when I finally left, when God finally released me, things, like I said, just began, the passion dwindle each year. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there was an emergence of another passion, which was for the music production, the writing, and the speaking. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, Brandy, I was calling myself covering up the fact that I was losing my passion. Yeah. I was about to leave one afternoon, and I would always run into a coworker because her class was located at the back. Mm-hmm. And so I would pass her basically every day. One day she stops me, Brandy, she says, "Let me talk to you, Mr. Nailer." I was like, "Okay, what's going on?" She said, "Do you still have a passion for teaching?" I looked at her, and I was like, I just kind of shook my head and no. I was like, "You could tell?" She was like, "I could tell." I said, "Man," I've been trying to put on like I still got it. And she said, "No, I see you." She said, "It's not the same since when you first started." She said, "I could tell the difference." I was like, "Oh, man, so if you can see it, I wonder who else can see it." And that was like one of those clear signs that, okay, it's time to start praying and seeking another avenue and a way to get out of this. And I'll never forget, I thought I was going to be able to leave. It should have been about 2001. But God spoke and told me, it wasn't time yet. And clearly it wasn't. But in 2004, that's when God spoke and we finally launched out to pursue the entrepreneurship. But yes.
So let's camp out on that for a second. So how did you know that it was time to leave? Other than that person reaching out to you, what kind of was helping you to know what direction to go? And
well, God began to give me a blueprint or a plan on what I was going to do as far as launching out, like I said, to pursue the entrepreneurship. And also doors really began to open for me to do performances and speaking engagements. I was getting calls for a lot of local, elementary schools, business organizations, bringing me in to start doing my speaking engagements. And that's why I was like, okay, I can do the motivational speaking, the music, and the writing. And, it was about that time when God began to inspire me as far as writing my first book as well, around that time. Because what happened, I began collecting and compiling the material, not knowing that it would transform and translate into a book. And so, God finally inspired me to do the full book on it. But like I said, I had been actually writing the content for years and just keeping on to it. And that's one thing I always inspire creatives to do. All of your content, hold on to it. Yeah. Because you'll look back and, you could basically do piecemeal and extract some of your concepts and you'll begin to see how they come together to make a full picture, a beautiful picture. So don't throw anything away. Sometimes, all you have to do is make some adjustments and modifications to update it and maybe make it relevant for this present time period. Yeah. But always keep your material. And, that's right now I have tons of stuff. And I'm serious. You just have to revisit and see, okay, how does this fit and where does it go now? But yes, that was that process and that's what happened. And as I say, finally, God just audibly finally spoke in my spirit and said he was going to provide the finances for me to transition, and into the full-time entrepreneurship.
So what did that time so you said you knew at year 4 in your teaching career that, okay, things are not the same.
Right.
But how long from that point, you had the colleague that said, "Hey, I see you struggling. I see you." Right. How long from there between the doors opening and you leaving, taking the leap? What was that period?
That was about 3 years or so from, like I said, that 4 years. So it was about 3 years that time period was. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was about 3 years for that time period, I would say. But yeah.
And how long was that? Is that including like the time your colleague said, like, "Hey, I see you"?
Right. Yeah, like I said, that was right around that perfect time.
Was that kind of like the nail on the head? Like, okay, I really got to get serious about finding my exit.
That was it.
Yeah.
And like, I was sharing with you before. So that was for that particular time period. But I would say about 2 years in itself, I was having trouble like trying to find my identity and that purpose and how everything would come together. Because kind of hearing and knowing that, okay, it's time to step out and God just dealing with me and prepping me for it, you still don't have the fullness of the picture. Yeah,
and that's scary to leave a for sure paycheck.
Right.
And a career, a respectable career.
Right.
Right. To just, were you married at this time?
I was married, and here's the craziest part, Brad. We had just had our third son, and he was a preemie. So we had all kind of trouble, with him. Yeah. But I knew, like I say, when I say God spoke so clearly, it was so concise and with clarity that I knew it was God, and I'm stepping out on exactly what God said.
That is a whole different type of confidence there.
Right. And looking back on it, it's like, man, boy, you were crazy.
Yeah, I know. That. Was your wife hearing the same message? Was she on the
hook? I told her that, God spoke. And because she knew if I say I heard from God, she knew I'm not just going to make that up.
Right.
And then she began to see things happening, manifesting, in preparation for it. And so she was like, okay. So she was in agreement with me to do it. But yes, like I said, it took a huge leap to do that. Yeah. But what it did, it taught me a lot. And one thing it taught me as far as scriptural principles, as far as prophecy, about the vision, it's for an appointed time. It says at the end, it will speak and not lie. Right.
Yeah.
So what that means is that when God gives us a vision, it shows us where we're going because he helps us to see the end from the beginning. But at the beginning, say, for instance, your vision has 10 puzzle pieces. Right.
Right.
At the beginning, you might only have 3 of the pieces. So that means you're lacking 7. But remember, we walk by faith, not by sight.
Right.
As you take steps, you're going to get more of the pieces.
True.
So if you get to say, when you're in the middle, you probably you'll have 7 pieces, but you're still lacking 3. You have to keep going until you get to the end. And guess what? That's when all 10 puzzle pieces are going to be present, come together, join, and make up the fulfillment of that vision. Yeah. But what happens as people walk, some people, they like to have all of the information.
Yes.
All of the details at the beginning, but God doesn't operate like that. But we have to walk by faith, not by sight. And as you take those steps, he'll reveal more and more. He'll connect you more and more. He'll bring in those needed resources.
Because part of it's like a development piece. It's like, hey, I'll give you what you can chew on for now and handle for now. And as you keep going, I'll give you some more.
Yes, ma'am. That's it.
Develop it some more. Because it's not just a vision. It's also developing you.
Exactly. See, it's preparation.
Yeah.
Now, I love that. Watch this, Brandy. So it's not only preparation for you, but God showed me this. It's preparation for your audience who has to receive you.
Yeah.
So you're being processed, but they're being prepared. They're going through different trials and tribulations so that now when you're prepped and ready, which you feed them, they'll be ready to eat it.
Yeah.
And they'll be in a place and space to need it. But the thing is, like I say, believing God, and that's where the patience comes in, where you have to trust that God knows best, and he knows what he's doing. He's orchestrating this in a divine manner. Like we say, the scripture says, his thoughts are not our thoughts, his ways are not our ways.
Right.
And that's where we have to trust those scriptures and know that, okay, he got me.
Yeah.
He has me, he's the master. He is planned this out. It has been preordained before I was even born, before the foundation of the world. And you quote these scriptures to yourself to build your confidence and to continue walking. And as you continue walking, like I said, I'll never forget God said everything's going to make sense really soon. Just keep walking, keep walking. And when I said, as sure as he said that, when I look at everything, Brandy, we can even, look at the situation now with me being a director.
Yeah.
And you know part of the story too. So just looking at that, that whole thing, initially, it didn't make sense. And I didn't even think that I would be in this position, but look at God.
Yeah. I think you had all your other things going on.
Right.
You're consulting and, all the things you've been doing, but you chose to come back to the coalition.
Right.
And that's just kind of cool. Like, what made you decide to come back and step in and do some of those things again?
Well, like I had told you guys, at the time, it was funny how I had one of two options. I had the two options.
Yeah.
I could continue on with the consulting, but in that arena, I was doing basically all of the work. Or was to come and be with you guys, to be with a team now, working with people to accomplish a goal, to fulfill a vision. And I decided, hey, I want to do that one, and it's like I said, as far as what God had been speaking to me, that aligned more than me doing what I had been doing. And then this position also enables me to use my full skill set. So in the other capacity, I was kind of doing more of the content creation and some, communication as well. But here I'm able to do the communication, organization, and content creation, just everything.
Yeah, and kind of fuse your content that you have created and then probably creating.
Right. Like I say, we're always learning, always developing. Guys always speaking and sharing and teaching. So,
for sure. Man, so how long were you only content creator, like in between? So you left teaching.
Right.
I know at one point you did work for the coalition as a parent educator.
Right.
Then you were consulting for a while, and then you came back to us November?
Yes, November last year.
Yeah. But in between all of that, how long were you solely a content creator?
Well, basically, since I stepped out in 2004, so we're talking about 20 years now.
Wow. Yeah.
But look, there's another little hat that I wore. I owned the janitorial service for 12 years.
Okay, wow.
And what happened when I stepped out to do the music, production, the motivational speaking and writing, as I told you, things were going well. Man, I had just produced my CD, I had just published the book. Doors were opening, things were going well. And then all of a sudden, I hit a dry spell. And it's like, oh my God, what is going on? What's next? And like I said, it's like the plan that God had inspired lasted 9 months. But then that last 9 months, Brandon, to this day, I can't even tell you how we made it. But because it was the whole full process, like a year and 18 months exactly. But when I say God took care of us in provision, and I mean, I'm talking about crazy things happen. I give you a prime example. One time, like I said, we were at a very bad space financially, right?
Yeah.
Just trusting the Lord, needing some money. And a company sent a check, in other words, and normally they send a draft, right?
Right.
And you have to come in to do the actual check. And so it was a loan, but it was in the form of a check. So it was like, if you sign this, you will be enrolled into a loan, and it's a check. And so I showed it to my wife and said, babe, this look like a check. She said, it got to be a draft. I said, saying it's a check. Brand, I went to the bank. I said, man, is this a check or a draft? I sent it through the chute. She said, this is a check and it's a loan. As soon as you sign it, you get the cash. Man, it was like $1,000.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's so many other things the Lord did to show how he will supernaturally and miraculously provide for you when your back is up against the wall and you don't have anything. You know? But yes, like I said, and it's just so many other things that God did in that time to prove himself that it's like, wow, he will see you through.
Yeah.
And he will, you trust him, you believe him. He's going to provide. But yes.
And I've experienced that as well in my life. It's really interesting how that works. And you're like, I don't know. I just know that this is where I need to be. Right. And then and that's where I came with the phrase, where God wills it, he's going to weigh it.
Right. I love it. I love it.
It's a little spin on the whole, there's a will, there's a way. It's like, no, if it's God's will, he will weigh it.
That's the key.
He will make the way for it to happen. Yeah. Cause I know, I went to seminary almost 20 years ago now, counting there. Yes, but not 20, 10, 12, 12, 15 years ago.
Okay.
Something around there.
Right.
Like 2012, 2013.
Okay.
Around that time. And at that time, like, I didn't know how I was going to pay for all that. Like, especially the housing, I was moving. I went in Texas, so not here. And I was like, I don't know. I just know this is where I need to be. And kid, I got like a check in the mail. I think it was like, I needed a refund. I think the previous employer I had a refund for like almost the exact amount, like down to the coins.
Oh my goodness, you got it.
And I was like, I know. So like, I know exactly what you mean. It's like, oh, okay, this is the Lord.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. Yes.
So that's happened. I've definitely experienced that. Yeah.
Well, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Yes,
oh man.
Yeah.
So you've had a lot of pivoting you've had to do.
They call me Mr. Pivot too. Yeah, I promise you. I had done like a webinar with a buddy of mine, and so she had done a design like a flyer, and she put on it Mr. Pivot. It has my picture on it because, like you said, I've done so many pivots, and when you look at it, though. That's how being led by the Spirit is. It takes you into all kinds of different directions. And when you have the humility to allow it, you'll see God making you pivot. Sometimes we get into such a place of comfort, satisfaction, and predictability that we resist the pivots.
Yeah, because we don't want to, because I think when that happens, it allows you to feel like you have it's a false sense of control.
Right.
Like you're making it happen.
Yeah, you're vulnerable.
So, and some people are just unwilling to go in that way, but I feel like, that's the way.
It is the way, because that's where you're learning, and like we're talking about, your growth and your development takes place. If you're constantly doing the same thing over and over, typically you're not going to really grow and develop. It's when you change and now you have to learn again, it expands you.
I mean, trust.
Right.
And God wants our trust. He wants us to trust in Him. And that's the one way to see, like, are you trusting Him, is by actually going outside of your comfort zone or out of your control zone. Maybe we should start calling it that.
Yeah,
the control
I like that.
zone.
The control.
Because, that's why you're comfortable, because you feel like you're in control of that situation.
Right. And like you say, what will happen? Life will throw those curveballs, or God will actually send them to get you off that place, out of that place of just satisfaction and contentment and stagnation. And He'll, I prefer God to prompt me and lead me to Him having to push me and force me out. I always say a blessing out of season is a curse. And so some things in your life are meant, like they say, a reason and a season. Well, those seasonal things, when the season is up, it's time to move on. Yeah. People have, all kind of things. You can have adverse impacts on your life when you're in a place that God has told you to leave. Yeah. But yeah.
So how do you know when it's time to leave?
He'll speak. I always say you can use your three spiritual senses. What is God showing you? Your ear. What is God telling you? And then the feeling, your discernment. What are you feeling in your spirit? And when there's alignment with those three things, well, the things you're seeing telling you to go, the things God is telling you are telling you to go, and then what you're feeling is telling you to go, it's time to pray and say, okay, Lord, just win. When? How soon? Yeah. And then once He releases you, you get that comfort, that peace, and that word. Then that's when you step. But like I said, it's like things will kind of line up to let you know it's that time. I'll give you a prime example. Like right before we left the coalition, all of those three things I told you were happening. What I was seeing was telling me, what I was feeling, and what I was hearing. And then it took, one final incident where, Lord's like, okay, you're going to be leaving very soon after this, coming up. And so when that incident occurred, it was like, okay, this is it. Yeah. It's time. Yeah. And, if I wouldn't have done that, then we wouldn't have this. Right. Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Man, I think when it comes to like trusting God's timing and showing the way, the people from the Bible, I always think about the most, people like Abraham, Moses, Joshua, because I feel like they kind of lived that out for us, or like showed us like what that looks like biblically. So we're not just pulling this out of our hats, guys. Like, to say, we have the examples with the specifics of God, those biblical examples. And the Bible gives us the timing and, has recorded it. So, another person who I love, one of my favorite characters is Joseph too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it all makes sense as far as the timing goes. So he was 17 when he got the dream, and he was 30 when it came to pass. So 13 years it took.
And guys, we're talking about Joseph, the ones, the coat of many colors, that guy.
Right. The guy who had, brothers wanted to kill him, but they put him in a pit. Then he went into slavery. Then he was put into prison. Yeah. And then he was exalted. Interpreted Pharaoh's dream and was exalted. But God had already showed him that from the beginning. But just look at all he had to go through to get to that place. Yeah. But yes, like you said, all of those biblical characters are our examples to increase our faith and to know that this is, like you say, it's a format that God operates in. Just a way he does it. And,
Man, and I like one of the ones I really like, or the piece of Moses that I found really interesting, is that the direction he told them to go was not a straight line, and that's something you don't catch if you just went to Sunday school.
Right.
It's something you gotta, when you read on your own, and guys read on your own. Right. When you really dig into that piece of the story, you're like, you mean, because the whole deal with the Egyptians, because they came back after him.
Right.
This is after Pharaoh had the whole place, and he said, "Let my people go." Well, eventually he did, and then he changed his mind. Yeah. And they were like, look at these Israelites, these Hebrews, they don't know what they're doing, because they were literally, if you look at a biblical map, they were going like way out of the way for where they were needed to go, or where they said they was going to go. And so the Egyptians were like, they don't know what they're doing. Let's go get these people. They're crazy. We need them. Our floors can be cleaned. Right. Yes, ma'am. And I think that's interesting because God did that on purpose.
He did. And if I'm not mistaken, I definitely will have to look it up. I've heard, seemed like the route to directly where they were going to Canaan was just 2 weeks, 13 days.
Yeah, it should have been a straight shoot. Right. But no, they went way out of the way. Right. But that was the Lord's direction, because you had the pillar of smoke, and then you had the in the day, and then you had the fire at night. Right. So, and it was a clear direction from the Lord. Right. But he did that intentionally. He did. And that's important, because I know sometimes, or I thought that was really interesting, because sometimes our paths seem way out the way. Right.
Yeah. And another thing that the Bible talks about too, the other path, it talks about how there was, I guess, another nation that was pretty strong. So he didn't want to take them that way, because, they were just coming out of Egypt, just being slaves. They weren't trained warriors. So they would have been fearful and probably would have turned back had he taken them that way. So that shows the providence of God and his wisdom, that he knows the route to take you that's going to keep you safe. Yeah. And keep you on the path. But like you said, it forced them to have to trust and lean on him. And that's what he wanted. He wanted to show them that, okay, look, you're coming from a place where you were dependent on your masters, right? They fed you this and that. And if you remember one of the complaints, they were excited about getting leeks and onions and everything. God, look, I'm going to feed you with some manna from heaven, right? But yes, and so he wanted to show them that, okay, you have to trust in me now, not on a system. And that's what that whole experience was about, learning how powerful I am in my miraculous, wonder-working power.
Right, right. So bringing it back to your story, so during those times when you were branching out and doing your new adventures, whether it was music or your janitorial thing, or what are some things that gave you hope and encouraged you during those times of doubt? Because I know, because I'm a creator as well. Right. There is constant doubt. Right. So how did you combat and deal with that and find encouragement to keep going?
Well, I think what really confirmed it when I launched out, just having the freedom, the flexibility and control, and, it motivated me, encouraged me when I was hitting those tough times. Yeah. Right? And just holding on to that word, that specific word that God had spoken to me, that, he was going to take care of me, he was going to provide for me, and that he was going to sustain me, provisionally. And that's what I held on during those darkest hours. Yeah. Even when I didn't know what was going to happen, how we were going to make it. I knew I had heard from God. But as I stated, just the flexibility of it all, I loved. I didn't realize I had that side of me being a teacher. And that's what it was. That was emerging, that I needed the flexibility. I needed the independence and autonomy, the creative control to plot my course, and do some things and have that freedom to do it. But that's what I really love about entrepreneurship, as a whole. Yeah. Just you being able to do what you need to do.
Yeah. And it puts you in the driver's seat. It lets you be your own taskmaster.
Right.
Master.
Right.
Yeah. And I like that as well. You
become your own navigator. Right?
Yeah. If you want to see it happen, you're able to see it happen or not.
Yes, ma'am.
So yeah, I definitely understand that for sure. Yeah. And so how did you know that it was God speaking to you and not just some like selfish ambition in your heart?
Well, through prayer, fasting, just consecrating. Got saved at 19, and I'll never forget, way back then, our leader at the time, the pastor was like, hey, if you pray and you listen, God will speak. And he encouraged us to get like a notebook and pen, and I started doing it. God began to speak then, and just all throughout the years. And I record exactly what God speaks, and, just watch it come to pass and go in the direction of the verbal commands he's given us. Because, we have the written word, which is the logos, but the rhema word is the spoken word.
Okay.
So when we want to get into the specificity and the meticulous details of the will of God, we got to hear the rhema, right? Because, in other words, in our Bible, Brandy, there's no scripture that's going to say, okay, Brandy, move to Texas in 2025.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So God has to declare that and speak it to you. I could go like with my spouse and everything, how God did that. That was just so crazy, Brandy. But I mean, he put her in my spirit. And what had happened at the time in the church, a lot of people was mostly single college students, right? Everybody was, some people were dating, some people were just really single. But everybody who was interested, desiring a mate, was trying to figure out, okay, if they're with somebody, is this my mate? Is this not? And so I never forget, it was a Sunday, the man of God led him by the Spirit. He said, look, this week, you guys have been seeking God to see if the person you're with is from the Lord, if it's his desire for you to get married, he's going to confirm it. And I kid you not, from that Monday on, a face of her was in my spirit. Wasn't anything lustful or anything, just her face. And like I said, I'd have to go through a whole bunch to get to the whole story. But to make a long story short, that same woman's face who was in my spirit, we've been married going on 27 years now.
Wow.
And there's more to it. What God spoke to her, spoke to me. But like I said, we'll have to delve into all the details another time. But
yeah. Awesome story. Awesome. Yes. Yeah, maybe that can be in your second interview.
Right.
Paired that with the music and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So how long do you think you would say you like stayed in fasting mode?
Well, it just differs in different seasons. I've had seasons where God has just called me to, a higher level of fasting, being very consistent with it. But during that time, I can't even quantify it, Brandy, as far as the actual time. It's just as God would lead, I would do it. I would do it. Yeah. And I think one of the most consecrating times of my life was when I was, it was probably about 2012, 2013. When God had launched me out, into ministry or whatever. Yeah. And just being isolated and just praying and fasting and consecrating seriously. That's when God gave me the book Revelation Rightly Revealed. During that time, he took me, like I said, to a whole nother level during that season. But it was, like I said, it was intense praying and fasting, because I look back now, I had just started my TV ministry at the time. And
TV too? My goodness, Renaissance man.
Yeah, we got this is a couple other things, but yes, man, I had a TV ministry here. The show was Motivating the Masses, and we recorded 50 episodes exactly. Wow! But I tell you what happened. I don't know. You probably remember this. It was should have been 2013, 14. Whenever it was a storm that hit over here in West Monroe.
Yeah,
and remember
a big storm.
Right.
I do remember that.
And
one of our
knocked
trees
the tower and stuff down at the assemblies, right? That's what I was recording with. And so it was out. That's what happened.
Man, yeah, because I do remember that, because I think that's when I started. I wrote for an online blog for somebody else for a little bit, and I remember that, because that was one of I had a piece I wrote, and I needed some pictures to go along with it.
Gotcha.
And I took some pictures of the magnolia trees that are along the tree line downtown Monroe, Beatonhorn, which was really sad at the time. I'm glad they were back growing up, but at the time I was like, oh no, there's trees. So yeah, I remember that storm.
Yeah, it was bad. It messed so much up, man. But that knocked that out. But yes. Like I said, during that time, like I said, my whole point was when I look at the videos and stuff, how small my face was and how small I was. I remember, I was consecrated back then. I remember that. But yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. Man. Would you say there's been any Bible verses that you would say, like, hey, this has been like my career verse or life verse or something that's just really influenced you?
Right. Proverbs 3-5, verses 5-6, rather. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him. He will direct your paths. Because that scripture has so much meat in it. You know, when I always think of head and heart, with the head, you think of competency, you think of reasoning, logic. But the heart, we're talking about feeling, we're talking about emotion, we're talking about discernment. Yeah. So what he's saying is, don't trust me with your logic and your reasoning, but you have to trust me with your emotions, with your spirit, with your inner being. And as you don't lean to your own understanding, I'm going to be able to direct your paths as you acknowledge me. And so when you look at direct, the Lord was showing me how, out of the word direct, you get directive, right? Which is giving you directions or actual steps. Right. So when I would normally hear the steps of the Lord, I'm thinking I see a vision of just footprints and steps and him directing you. But what he's really talking about is giving you those directives and those steps. For instance, if you want to bake a cake, step 1, grease the pan. Step 2, mix the flour and everything. So that's what he does. He literally gives you instructions and steps. Do this. Go here. Call this person. Email this person. Attend this event. Yeah. And that's how he orders your steps, by giving you steps and directives. And like I say, it points you in the direction towards your destination, towards the fulfillment of that vision he's giving you. But yes, that's my scripture there. Those two scriptures.
Man, I love it. And I definitely see how you lived that out, for sure, especially all the things you talked about.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
What could you say to the person that, because some people struggle with like having confidence that it's the Lord. Right. They might sit down and pray and they might journal, but there still would be, I just know a lot of people have that conflict of like, is it me? Is it me and my own ambition, or is it really the Lord? What would you say to them to let them be confident and knowing that, no, like that's something the Lord gave you?
Right. Well, just analyze it, using a word, just making sure it's aligning with the word. And that lets you know, okay, it's not just me, but okay, so just think of it like this. Is it helping others? Is it pointing them in their direction? Is it improving their lives? Is it inspiring, educating, directing, building them? And, like I said, of course, even with your gift and what God gives you, it's not just to bless others, it's to bless you as well. Yeah. So don't ever think that whatever I do, I'm not going to get anything out of it, because God actually doesn't work like that. It may seem like you're just giving all and not getting anything back, but the way God does it, he arranges win-win scenarios. So even as you're giving out with your gift, blessing others, it blesses you too. Whatever God has called you to do, that's the format it'll fit. But as I stated, as you analyze it and you say, okay, it's really helping people, it's not anything shysty or manipulating or deceptive, it's the truth, like I say, it aligns with the word, it's not going against the word in any way, then more than likely is God prompting you to do that. Typically the devil, we know he comes to kill, steal, and destroy. So if it's harming, it's destructive, it's leading people astray, okay, this the devil, or it's me, I'm just being selfish.
Or manipulative in some way.
Right. So you just filter it like that and process it. Yeah. But, I think, Brandy, what helped me the most, and I always teach people this, is just overcoming fear. And the way I did that, God gave me a powerful acronym that I always use, and it's the meaning of the word no, which is next option, new opportunity, not over. So whenever you do something happens and you feel it's a failure, right?
Right.
Remember, failure is a part of success. If you take out of your mind that really nothing is a failure, it's just a lesson learned. I got wisdom out of it. I know what not to do next time.
Right.
If you can change your perspective and condition yourself to see it that way, you'll be on your way. Because when you encounter the no's and the failures, you say, okay, I'm looking for my next option. I'm looking for my new opportunity because it's not over.
Yeah.
And so every time you encounter the no or the failure, if you condition yourself to do that, you're going to be able to do it again and do something else. So think about me. I've had to step out, first of all, as the speaker. Well, no, I started the music first. Okay, so I've encountered the rejections as a music producer, songwriter, entertainer. Then I started out, I did started with the speaking, right?
Yeah.
So I've encountered the rejections there. Then I started with the writing. I've encountered the rejections there. So if I wouldn't have adapted that mind frame, I would have been giving up.
Yeah. Stayed home in your little corner.
Right. The janitor, just everything I'm doing and have done, I would have stopped at the first sign of rejection and opposition. But you have to condition yourself that, look, man, what's going to happen? It's a no. Okay, it didn't succeed. And this is what I teach people too. Separate yourself from your endeavors, Right. So for instance, like, okay, the podcast, if it doesn't do as well as you think, okay, it's not me. It's an extension of me, but it's not me. The podcast fails. I'm not a failure.
Yeah.
If the business failed, the business failed. I didn't fail. I'm not the failure, Even if the marriage relationship failed, okay, it failed. I'm separate from that. I can recover. I can move and transition, pivot into the next thing. But you have to separate yourself from your different activities and the things that extend from you, because if you stay connected, especially if they don't go well, then it's going to impact you.
I mean, definitely to say, as a content creator myself, like, you get really comfortable with no, or I have, and it really is not such a big deal anymore, which then makes me courageous to keep asking for new things or to do different stuff. Cause I'm like, well, if the worst you can say to me is no, it's not really not that big of a deal. And I don't take it personally. Yeah. I think that's what I'm hearing you say right there. Like, don't make that a part of like you. They're not saying no to you. They have their own hang up or own little thing, or maybe they're just not able to this time. Maybe it's not a no, but a not yet. Right. And just take it with stride with that, not be so personal. And I like what you were saying earlier about how, discerning about, is it you or is it God? Right. I think, I've heard other people say this, I've heard Sadie Robinson say this and others. And I think I agree. Like, I think in our culture, maybe it's just when I was younger, it seemed like it was like a season, I call it a season, but like, I'm not sure what the time frame is or whatever, but there's a time frame where it was kind of put out like, you gotta know what God wants for your life and seek that out, to the point where it was kind of crippling people because they're getting too wrapped up in, well, especially for the young people, people who are like in their going to college and whatever, too much pressure put on, like, I got to figure out God's way right now, or it's just done, or I've missed it and messed up my whole life. Right. And that's just not, as Sadie would say, and as I'm hearing you say, it's like, you don't have to put so much like weight on yourself for that, because God is sovereign.
Yes. And then, like you say, life is a journey, right?
Yes.
You don't just run one step and get there.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of steps.
And like, you don't put that much thought into the clothing you put on.
Right. You put it on. Just go pick something.
You make it or, there's choices. And I think those other decisions are kind of the same way, as long as, like you said, these are things that, that help people. Right. It's not straying from what the word says. Then because, God's commands for us are to love people and to love Him. Right. So if whatever your endeavor is doing those things, then it is of the Lord.
Right. Like sometimes, Brandon, I say we complicate the simple. Right. I prefer to simplify the complex. It's not. Sometimes we can make it rocket science. Whereas that's not it.
And like you were kind of like, I like how for a second there we kind of talked about fear, because I think that's the part, because we don't like, ourselves to feel that way, the uncomfortableness of possibly failing or what that might look like, and the scorn of friends and family, because that's who we actually hear from it the most. I told you that wasn't a good idea. I don't know what you were thinking.
You left your good job.
I know. What was that about?
Crazy.
You know, with your young wife and your children and your son with the being a preemie. I mean, like that's the condemnation you hear. And the thing is that what they don't always realize, you've already thought that yourself.
Right.
You know?
You thought about it. And what the thing is, too, you prepare yourself for it. You know, you have to be realistic about your connections, your family, your friends. And you know they're going to be cynical. But in their perspective, they're looking out for you good.
Right.
They are. They
are coming from a place of love.
Right. And protection and security. But
But, you know, on the other end of it, you know what the Lord put in you, and you have to let that be your anchor and nothing else. You know, I feel like that's what a lot of what you have said. And I'm like, because I've been there, I'm there. Right. And I get that totally.
Look, I'm going to use one of my quotes since you asked about me using them. One of them in that first book, I say success breeds support. And that means that, see, when you first start off, people are kind of watching you. You know, I say they pull a Peter. So Peter, when Jesus, the thing happened with Jesus, he followed close enough that if things went well, he could run up and say, Lord, I'm here. I was here with you. All the disciples gone, but I'm here. But he followed far enough back that when things went awry, he could curse and say, oh, no, I wasn't with him. I don't know him. I don't even know Jesus. And so a lot of your relatives, that's what they're doing, and friends. They're watching just enough. So if things do pan out, they can run in the scene. And, I was here. See, I've been watching. I've been following.
Yeah, I'm their cousin.
Right. Their cousin, your best friend now. But if things blow up, that's my distant cousin. Yeah, we cool. We not.
You know, that's the black sheep of the family.
Right. But when people start seeing you succeeding, that's when they're gonna come. That's when they're gonna support you.
Well, I think sometimes it's also just trying to see how authentic we are.
Right.
You know, how, like, are we really going to, how trusting in the Lord are we really? Is God really leading us, or was it something else? So, and you can't really blame family and friends for that either. I feel that that's, God gave us logic, and you got to weed out, who's true and who's not. So that's good too. Definitely. But and I think part of to put that in perspective for the person who's, wanting to figure out this or that and the other, that's part of it too. So not to be so discouraged from that.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, how has all of this, you've had this long journey. How has this, impacted like your relationship with Christ? What are some things you feel like you learned from God about all this?
I know it definitely took me into a different dimension, as I was stating earlier. And I love Psalms 91, dwelling in the secret place of the Most High. And I always say, we have to be a dweller. In other words, we need to have an address there, a residence there, and not be an occasional visitor and a frequent, traveler just coming through, but just having residence and staying in the face of God and being in the presence of God. And what that has done, I mean, not only just for his revelations, God revealing, but it really changes your nature, to where you bear the fruit of the Spirit. Because if you think about it, even naturally, whoever you're around a lot, you got that fellowship, you exchange. There's an exchange. Right. You pick up stuff. You influence others. They pick up stuff from you.
You start talking like them too sometimes. Right. I mean, that happens. Like you start picking up little phrases and maybe a little accent, Yeah, that happens.
And so spiritually, it's the same concept. The more we're around God, guess what? We pick up his nature. We pick up his mind frame. We pick up his perspective and how he sees things. And what it really does, it just broadens your horizons. When I teach on vision, with vision comes 3 sights. Foresight, which is the ability to see ahead. Insight, which is the ability to see underneath the surface. And then oversight, which is the ability to manage and supervise, right?
Yeah.
So with the closer and the higher you get in God, he expands that thing. Like I say, you get to see way down the line. And you have a broader perspective, too. He gives you better insight to discern, to detect, to know people's strengths and weaknesses, their motives, how they think. And then he gives you, like I say, he increases your leadership capacity. So because the greater foresight and insight you have, the greater oversight you have. The more people you can manage, the more finances and resources you can manage once you develop those things. But I believe, God has really equipped me with that. And there's something else, I guess, out of my journey with God. In addition to writing the books, I have an online school. And so,
oh my goodness, Damon Nailer. Another thing. I'm like, goodness, all these Easter eggs here. I'm like, what?
The onion keeps on peeling back and so many layers.
An online school. Wow.
Right. But Real Life Academy. And so I've taken, like I said, my experiences and things I've learned in business, being a husband, being a father, being a minister, just all of those hats. And the wisdom God has given me, I put it into a place to where you can be educated. You don't have to fall on any of the pitfalls and the pitfalls that I did. I could kind of help you, avoid that stuff.
Yeah.
But so that's what it's really taught me and helped me to do. And then doing these, being able to share my insight and wisdom with others to help them along their journey. But I think that's really what it is helped me to do, to be productive and to have that strong, consistent relationship with the Lord.
Yeah. And I like that, how you started out talking about, like, the dwelling place and having, because if you're not filled up, there's nothing you can share. You're not helping anybody.
I gotta say,
at that point, you are just kind of, speaking hot air.
Thank you.
That's all that it is.
I say we got to be full of Him. Yeah. And as I always say, you can only reproduce what's already produced in you. And so we got to get in His presence so He could fill us, like you're saying, with the fruit of the Spirit. Now we can go out and operate in overflow and spill our love, our joy, and peace on others. As you stated, if you're depleted and you're lacking, you don't have anything to give. You try to keep the little that you have.
I don't know, whatever you're saying, I don't know if we wouldn't want to hear that or take that. Like, I don't know.
Right.
What is that?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, man, Damon, it has been such a treasure to have you on today. This has been so much fun.
Likewise. I love it. I appreciate the opportunity, like I said.
Yeah.
Yes,
well, it's just been a great time, having you here, and I'm so glad you've been able to share your wisdom. And I've been really enjoying learning all like these fun little things about you. You got online school and all these other things that you do currently. So that's awesome. And we'll probably have links to that in the show notes in just a minute. But so you guys be looking out for that. But just thank you again for so much for coming out and sharing all this with us. It's been a pleasure.
Amen. It surely have. And my name is Damon Nailer, and this is my story of the middle.
I'm your host, Brandy Bostic, and you've been listening to the Up From the Muck podcast. If you want some extra content, check out my Patreon account in the show notes below.
Psalm 40, verse 2, He brought me up from a desolate pit out of the muddy clay and set my feet on the rock, making my steps secure.